All right, let's talk about the trial of Scot Peterson. Not that Scot Peterson. I'm talking about the former sheriff's deputy school resource officer who has been charged with 7 counts of child neglect and 3 counts of culpable negligence for the 10 people that were shot, including 6 killed during the Parkland school shooting back in 2018. The allegation being that Peterson did not enter the building with his service weapon and confront the shooter. Now, I should tell you that Peterson is not charged with respect to the 11 people that were killed and 13 people that were injured before he got to the building. Now, with this trial about to begin, I want to bring on a very special guest, a familiar face for all of our Law&Crime trial watchers, Peterson's criminal defense attorney, Mark Eiglarsh. Mark, it's so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you having me, Jesse.
So let's do a broad overview. Okay, so my understanding is the defense's main argument is that your client is not criminally responsible because he did not know where the shots were coming from. He did not know the shots were coming from inside the school. Is that correct?
If we had to sum it up in one soundbite, then I guess I would agree with that. There is so much more to this because the situation was very fluid, right? The 4 minutes and 15 seconds that he was there while the shooter was there for 6 minutes and 36 seconds, each shots changed to some extent, but all remain the same in that he did not know precisely where the shots were coming from.
Okay, let's talk about that. Now, you're very kind. You shared some trial boards with me, and I think this one is particularly helpful. What it is it actually shows the time frame. So we're talking about 6 minutes and 36 seconds when the shooter was in that school. So we're talking about 2:23:25 p.m. to 2:27:35 p.m. And your client was on the scene for the final 4 minutes and 15 seconds. And I want to be clear. You're saying during that entire time, he thought the shots were outside?
I will answer it this way. He had no idea with certainty that the shots were coming from inside the 1200 building and or that any kids were killed at all. And it's important to note, people say, well, he was there for so long. Again, his only opportunity to kill the killer was 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So the clock starts to run the minute he hears the first shots when he arrives on scene. He had a 32-year career where he was an exemplary officer. He's the father of 4 children, 2 who served in the military. He won numerous awards, Deputy of the Year, School Resource Officer of the Year, and we're talking as recent as 2016 was the last award he received. So just 2 years before this atrocious massacre that took the lives of so many, he was decorated. So all of a sudden they're claiming he became some coward, some criminal. I say absolutely not, Jesse.
Why did he think the shots weren't coming from the school, inside the school, or wasn't sure they coming from inside the school? Because I would imagine a counter argument could be, well, why didn't he just open the door, gun drawn, and listen to what's going on?
Got it. There's a reason why we're asking the judge to bring the jurors to the scene. It wasn't until I got there that I literally said out loud, are you kidding me? I told the prosecutor, I go, get over here. Like almost like he was keeping this from me. The building is nothing like you can imagine. It is 73 yards long from one end to the other. We're talking about 3/4 of a football field, and it's very high. You can't imagine how big it is. My client was investigating a firecracker complaint on the east side of the building. So he starts to approach the door. He never got to the door. He never opened the door because, boom, shots were fired on the entire other side of the building. At 2:23:25, my client hears the loudest boom. And the reason why he thought it was coming from outside, along with 20 some odd other people that we will have testify who also thought it was coming from outside, is because the door was opened on the west side of the building where the shots were coming from. The shooter was aiming his gun in a westerly direction, and Aaron Feist, the coach, was on the other side of the door. So the door's open, the shots are going out. It sounded like it was coming from outside. Every single witness, even the most right-wing state witnesses, say it was very reasonable for my client to believe from hearing those initial shots that they were coming from outside and not from inside the building.
So taking that as true, I guess a counter argument would be, well, how come he didn't get closer to where he thought the shots were? You know, there's a video, there's surveillance video of your client on the outside of the building. And people have criticized your client because it appears that he's just standing there or pacing back and forth. And I guess the argument would be, why didn't he try to go closer to where the shots were and make any kind of movement? Because there'd be a difference if he was behind, let's say, a car or behind some sort of structure, taking fire, looking out. He was just standing there.
Right. Okay. So great question. I thought that too. As a citizen in South Florida, where I initially thought, my goodness, what a coward. I don't even want to meet with the guy. All right, fine. He wants me to represent him. I'll meet with him reluctantly. And then he showed me the evidence. Okay. And I don't know that we're ever going to accomplish in 20, 30 minutes the totality of what is the evidence. My opening statement will probably be an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay. But I will try to break it down in sound bites. Okay. At some point, he got as close as he could to where he thought the sounds were coming from. He announces on his police radio immediately, shots fired, 1200 building. Now he says that because that's the general area from where he's hearing the shots. He doesn't know, as again, 20 some odd other people that will be testifying. If you start running to the right, you have no idea. You run to the left, you have no idea. You start running forward, you don't know. Could the shots be coming from the top of the building, the east side of the building, the west side of the building, the 1300 building, the parking lot? If you saw it on the map, you'd see literally everything was in play. So what he did was what his training told him to do. You eagerly await for more information. If you don't know where to go, you're waiting. And guess what? People are saying, he knew because they would have told him over the radio. No, all those calls that the children made from inside the building on their cell phones went to Coral Springs Police Department and not the Broward Sheriff's Office. My clients with the Broward Sheriff's Office, so all those calls, and this is undisputed, went to Coral Springs Police Department. Nobody patched the radios. No one ever told my client in real time, hey, listen, go into the 1200 building. The guy's on the second floor or the third floor. So to answer your question, no, he didn't know. And by the way, I'll add this. The scene becomes fluid. At some point, my client believes, almost right away, because the Las Vegas shooting took place just a few months before, if I don't know where the shots are coming from, I may be the target of those shots. He's thinking almost right away, and he told the investigators this right after the shooting, he thought potentially he's dealing with sniper fire. And the next round of shots are literally whizzing over his head. So you don't stand out and go, okay, all right, except you're on a cheesy TV drama involving cops. That's when you stand up with no vest, no helmet, no nothing, a little gun. No, you take a tactical position of cover and you wait for these bullets to stop whizzing over your head, and or you know it's safe to come out. It was never safe for him to come out.
Just to follow up on that, he doesn't appear to crouch, though. He's standing.
You'll see that there's a pole that blocks what he's doing.
Yeah,
all witnesses say that he was in a position of cover with his gun and he was looking. What you see is him going forward. And I asked him about that. I go, yeah, it looks like he said, Mark, the radios are so bad in that building. And everybody will say how bad the radios are, even before the shooting, that you get no reception inside the school. He was forced to leave his position of cover, take a few steps so that he can get any reception and or be able to have his messages received. And I sent you a certain transcript of what he was saying in real time. And boy, was he getting information out.
That's exactly what I want to go to. So you sent this trial board of the transmissions. I'd like to go through them with you if we can. So,
and just so we're clear, these are only his transmissions.
Yes.
Very telling also are the transmissions that were made of other officers, like when the shooter's in the building, Deputy Kratz yells, shots fired from the football field. Shots fired from the football field. That gets repeated. As my client's trying to figure out where this is happening, he's hearing shots fired from the football field. Another person gets on. Shots fired, Middle Glades. Wait, Middle Glades? That school is all the way hundreds of yards west. It was impossible to discern precisely where the shots were coming from.
By the way, before we get to the transmissions, just to be clear about this as well, is your client the only one who's been criminally charged for not doing something?
Yes.
And why do you think that is?
Clear, there were, I'm going to tell you, numerous other officers who heard the same shots my client did, didn't know where they were coming from, and didn't go in the building, right? So yeah, I think it's selective prosecution. Here's what happened, okay? I don't mind going public with this because I'm going to say it in the trial, but I'll get some backlash. The chief Sheriff Israel, very well known around here, politician, okay? He was taking heat because that's what they do. Right or wrong, it starts at the top, right? What's wrong with your men? Why didn't they do better? Couldn't this guy have been stopped? And I'm not saying whether he could have done better or not, but hell, if it's bad weather or gas prices go up, the person at the top always gets blamed. So he was taking a lot of heat. So he went on Jake Tapper's CNN, a town hall meeting, and he got crucified. I mean, nobody was favorable towards him. He admitted that to me in deposition. So without calling my client, and he had my client's cell phone because that deputy worked at the school football. He was a football coach, and his sons went to that school. So we had a very personal relationship with my client. Instead of calling my client to say, hey, buddy, tell me what happened. I need to know, why didn't you go in? That wouldn't have worked for him because my client would have told him what I'm telling you now and how he couldn't tell and the pronounced echo in the area that everybody talks about. He then does that famous press conference where he says, he should have gone in to kill the killer. And I remember hearing that myself as a citizen. I'm going, wait, so he knew where the shots were coming from based upon that? He knew kids were being harmed and he just chose to cower in the corner and do nothing? That was the narrative that he tried to sell us because that gets all the heat off of him. He ultimately then was suspended and fired, and they came after him. Eventually, the governor got him. But once everybody hears that, oh my God, it's a political firestorm. The governor then has the Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigate my client. And it wasn't to find a neutral finding. It was, you better take that guy down. The victims' families, they were outraged, as they should be, that a guy did nothing. And then the prosecutor was given half of the information, distorted information. I have the reports that were handed to the prosecutor. The lead investigator, Riddick, will be crucified by me. He left out, amongst other things, my client asking in real time to one of his officers, hey, do you know where the shooter is? You know where the shooter is? He left that out. Doesn't that evidence that in real time he doesn't know where the shooter is? How dare he say that he left it out because, well, the shooter was gone at that point. I said, wait, the shooter was gone for a minute and a half, and no one on the scene knew that. So you don't think that still evidences his state of mind? No, I don't think it needed to be included. Garbage in, garbage out. Between the political pressure and the fact that this investigator left off key information like my client ordering a code red, which is what he did for the benefit of all those kids, my client got charged. It was no surprise.
And look, from my point of view, I think there's a difference between trials being fought in the court of law, which is where I think it should be, and all the facts come out, versus the court of public opinion, because there really has been a very strong public message against your client, and I know that he's looking forward to clearing his name in this trial. So I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. I do want to go back to the transmissions, though, because I think this is important. So again, These are the transmissions from your client. Let's go to 2:23:26 p.m. Be advised, we have possible, could be firecrackers. I think we have shots fired, possible shots fired, 1200 building. Then I'm going to play another one, 2:24:14 p.m. We're talking about the 1200 building. It's going to be the building off of Holmberg Road. So when he says that, and he's talking about the 1200 building, couldn't someone interpret that as him saying it's happening inside the building? The reason I say that is because how come in those transmissions he doesn't say it's coming from outside the 1200 building, or it's outside that building? How come he doesn't say that?
All valid points. I think if I'm being intellectually honest with you, I say, when he says 1200 building, boy, that could be interpreted. One way someone could interpret it as he's now somehow giving intelligence as to where the shots are specifically coming from. But that's just not the truth. What he's doing is he's giving the quickest location where he's at. That first transmission, he's literally hearing shots as he's on the east side of the 1200 building. And he wants the cavalry to come. So he's saying 1200 building. He's not saying, by the way, I hear shots from within the 1200 building because I'm sure that from 73 yards away with the door opened up and the shots being fired in an opposite direction from where he is, I know with certainty that the shots are coming from inside the building. So I get it. I understand that's enough to give the prosecutor a good faith basis to go forward and say, aha, he said 1200 building. When officers are trained to give their location, he does believe that the area around the 1200 building or the neighboring 1300 building, which he then says later on in the transcript, is where the shots are coming from. Okay? So him saying 1200 building will be the feature of the state's case. And I'll say, he's giving his location, 1200 building.
And I think a text message, not a text, excuse me, a transmission that might be helpful to that is at 2:25:18, where he says, we're looking at the 1200 building. It's going to be the 300 building, going to be off Holmberg Road, the senior lot. Is that, when he says the senior lot, is that him saying, I think the shots are coming from the parking lot?
No.
No?
I'd love to take that interpretation. No, to be honest with you, no.
Hey, I was trying to help the case. That's the way that I thought looked at it.
I loved it. Now I'm thinking, should I use that? But no, because it's not the truth. He's just trying to narrow down for everybody to find the location of where he's at, where this scene is at. Nobody knows that school, so he's trying to give it a description. But keep going with these transcriptions, because you're going to then see a lot that supports my client's belief that he is facing potential sniper fire, because he's locking the school down for that reason.
And this is the one I really wanted to get into. So this is 2:25:56 p.m. And he is responding, acknowledging Deputy Kratz. And he says, all right, 26. Also heard it's over by inside the 1200 building. We're locking down the school right now. Make sure there's no pedestrian traffic anywhere on Holmberg Road. Is it at that point he knew that the shots were coming from inside? Because didn't the shooter still remain in the building for another 2 minutes?
Yeah. The answer is no. You read that. We would then play the statement. He didn't say by inside the 1200 building. He didn't say it that way, Jess.
I'm just highlighting that word, the fact that he said inside.
It's not lost on me that word appearing there could be something and will be something the state highlights. But what he's saying is by inside, meaning he's struggling. One of the possibilities is he believes that shots may be coming from the 1200 building, meaning he could be under sniper fire at that point from somebody shooting out of the 1200 building, which he was, because at that point, the guy's shooting bullets over his head. He had just done that. So my client believes by inside. He doesn't know if it's inside, by. He's still trying to figure it out. But here's the key, the second part of that statement, okay, where he says that we're locking down the school right now. Make sure there's no pedestrian traffic anywhere on Holmberg Road. So now we've got two scenarios, and you'll see throughout this transcript, he's locking down the school and people from coming in. This was the time that parents were coming to pick up their kids. He didn't want a flood of people on the scene. Why? Because he's thinking they're going to get killed with these bullets, okay? If he thought, as the state's alleging, that shots were coming from inside the 1200 building, he says, guys, get over here now. Get in. Let's go. He doesn't lock down the building. In fact, he further states in another minute or so, stay at least 500 feet away from not just the 1200 building, but also the 1300 building, the neighboring building, because he fears that sniper fire could be coming from anywhere, and he wants to make sure that nobody comes onto the campus. So you've got two options, Jesse, if you're the jury. Either he is some evil SOB who wanted children to die and keep cops away from helping those kids, which nobody's going to say, or he reasonably believed that he was potentially facing sniper fire and wanted everyone to stay off the campus.
Well, is this prosecution arguing that he's evil or that he was scared?
Well, I haven't heard the prosecution's argument yet, and maybe it was scared. I don't know. I hope they say scared, because in the worst case scenario, you're talking about a cop who's human and froze, but that's not what happened. Let
me ask you one question.
I'm talking about that transmission.
I wanted to ask why, and correct me, because I'm sure this is going to come into evidence, couldn't an argument be made, well, if he thought the shots, he didn't know where they were, but maybe thought they were coming from outside, why not enter the school? And is that a tactical advantage, because you're no longer outside? You're now in the school, and you might be able to see out what's happening. You tell me if that's going to come into evidence during the course of this case.
Probably. Anything is, hindsight is 20/20. But in real time, okay, and you'll hear from 20-something other witnesses, equally plausible are about 20 to 30 other scenarios of where the shooter or shooters might have been. When you think you're under sniper fire, you don't just get up and guess it's going to be in the building. There's you start maybe in the 1300 building, or run to the football field. There, he was told shots fired by the football field. So he wished when he heard that, he gets up and he just runs to the football field. People would say, oh, well, why'd you go there? In other words, he's waiting to be the most tactically serviceable by waiting for some type of real-time intelligence that never came on his radio. He's just waiting. Somebody tell me where to go. So yeah, hindsight's
So-
2020. And by the way, let me just add, by the way, Jesse, I got to add that building. It took a SWAT team. Let's go with your theory. A SWAT team, 30 minutes to clear. And there's a SWAT team of 12 people, armed,
Right.
tactical gear, to clear the first floor, to then clear the second floor, to then get to the third floor. He supposedly would have had to have gone in there and within 4 minutes and 15 seconds, cleared the first floor, cleared the second floor to get to the third floor. The theory is, well, maybe he would have heard the shots on the third floor. Do you know that not a single kid on the third floor heard the shots from the second or first floor? I can't explain it, but the video shows them calmly walking into the third floor when the fire alarm goes off, and they're all calm. And then Cruz appears on the third floor, bah, 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 and then the kids go crazy. So there's no way he would have heard the shots. If he went in on the first floor, he would have heard the shots. He would have to clear every classroom. It would not have made a difference.
You make a very interesting argument when you talk about the transmissions he was receiving weren't very particularly helpful to him. But you said there's 22 witnesses that also thought the shootings might have been happening from outside. I'll ask you, when did they think the shooting was happening outside? Did they ever think that they maybe they thought it for the first minute or so and then realized it was inside? And B, my understanding is your client, when the shots first happen, jumps into a cart with two unarmed civilian security guards. He tells them eventually to leave. But my understanding is those guards believe the shots were happening inside the school.
Okay. So you asked a bunch of questions. Your first one, I've already forgotten because I'm getting old.
No. So the first one is about the 22 witnesses who say the shots might have been from outside.
So let me
Did they ever
that,
realize when it was outside? Yeah.
Okay, that's really compelling. And here's the list. I sent it to you. Okay. Pick what you like. You like police officers, you like teachers, you like faculty, you like students. They're all on here, all different genders, flavors, colors, whatever you want. No one with any particular loyalty to my client. And in real time, they all believed 100% and never changed, never vacillated, that the shots that they heard were coming from outside of the building. But more specifically, each one mostly gives a specific location. And what's unique is that they're literally all over the place. There's two sisters who are testifying, same DNA, same shots heard. One puts the shooter on one side of the campus. The other one puts the shooter on the other side of the campus. They're all over the place. And so to answer your question, no. After the shots were done, they didn't then say, well, gosh, those initial shots I thought were one place, and now I believe otherwise. No, they all felt they were coming from inside the building. And one teacher who I just spoke to yesterday again, okay, she had a student come talk to her and say, I opened up the 1200 building, and it looks like there's firecrackers going off in there because there's a lot of smoke, and I'm hearing lots of pops. So he thought there were firecrackers in there. He goes and he tells the teacher. She has this real-time intelligence as she's exiting her classroom and getting within 15 to 20 feet from my client. She hears the same shots he did.
Right.
And she said 100% they were coming from outside, and she never changed her mind.
And what about the security guards I thought the report was they thought the shots were coming from inside.
They did. For sure, one of them did. I'm not sure about the other one. For sure, Greenleaf, who was with him. So I asked Greenleaf. Greenleaf and Medina, the other two security guards, had extra information. I don't have those exact words, but extra information with Medina having gone to the building and he heard things. So they had extra information that my client didn't have. But
they didn't communicate. They didn't communicate with him. They didn't communicate with your client.
They 100% did not. Okay. There was some allegation that Medina told my client on the way to the building. Medina says in deposition, 100% that is totally false. I never communicated. Your client was on his radio, listening, monitoring. He was never given that information. But I will tell you this. I did ask Greenleaf, who, by the way, was interviewed after. In other words, everyone was interviewed after they knew the shots were coming from the 1200 building. I think that affected certain people, right? But let's say Greenleaf was being honest. He said, no, I thought the shots were coming from inside. Well, did you ever communicate that to my client? Did you ever say, hey, man, go in there. Shots are being fired. He said he never did. I also asked him, did it look like my client knew where the shots were coming from? He said no. Did it look like my client was trying to struggle and try to figure out where they were coming from? Absolutely. And he describes what led him to conclude that. So, yes, that's what I give to you on them.
Let me ask you about the trial. It sounds to me like this is an opportunity for your client to take the stand and explain what happened. Is that something we can expect?
There's always an opportunity for that. And I'm going to tell you this. 99% of the time, I keep my clients off the witness stand. Number one, anyone can be made to look like they're guilty, even when they're not. Okay, we know that. Prosecutor's already bragged to me that he's a skilled cross-examiner, right? So if my client takes a stand, it's because he has to. And I don't think he has to. Now, he might want to. He may insist, Mark, I got to get up there. He's telling me that. He's telling me right now, Mark, they've got to hear from me. I got to get up there. But if he doesn't, I'm telling you right now, it's because I tell him, you don't have to. You don't have to let this pit bull of a prosecutor make you look guilty, number one. Number two, it's not going to be necessary. They will not be able to prove this case beyond the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that he did a criminal act. The guy ordered a code red. The guy did everything he could to protect those students with what he had. We'll be able to prove that with all the things that he did. He ordered a code red, by the way, and one teacher couldn't get back into his classroom because he left his keys in the classroom. Those kids were left to run in the hallway and cruise killed those kids. My client's being charged with child neglect for those kids. Where does the teacher's responsibility come in?
I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to go into an interesting legal argument that I was hoping you could explain to both me and our listeners. And my understanding is that you want the jurors to hear this Florida statute that specifically excludes law enforcement officers from being labeled as caregivers. Prosecutors have argued that he is a school resource officer. He is a caregiver. I think the judge said that the jurors should be able to decide if that caregiver label will apply to your client. Walk us through what that's about.
Well, an appellate issue clearly is the judge's failure to dismiss this case, which he should have legally, but I understand why he didn't politically, because the statute clearly defines what a caregiver is. And it says excluding law enforcement officers. So the judges went, well, school resource officers are different. No, they're not. They're deputies. They're sworn officers. Additionally, they're not caregivers. Factually, I hate making that argument because like, well, they do offer protection to the kids, so they're kind of caregivers. But let's look at it in a practical matter. I'm going to ask every single SRO, school resource officer who's testifying, hey, do you feel like you're a caregiver? In other words, do you check on each kid to make sure they're nourished, they had enough water, their needs are cared for? No, it's because they're not. How about this, Jesse, this image? Picture me playing the role of my client, right? Who's a school resource officer investigating a student for a felony. And he says, I'm going to read you your Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Pause. And when the student's deciding whether to answer, he goes, wait, hold on. Now he moves closer to the student and he says, I'm your caregiver now. Don't answer the questions because they could really harm you. I'm your caregiver. Don't answer that question. He can't play the role of caregiver and police officer.
And just to be clear, the caregiver is just for the child neglect charges, or can it also be applied to the culpable negligence charges? Or because I want to understand why this is so important, this label.
I'm focusing on the felony charges, the child neglect. No cop has ever been charged under the statute because it's just not legally plausible. It took this unusual set of circumstances. If he's convicted of a misdemeanor, they don't take his pension, and he doesn't essentially go to prison for life. You start adding in these felonies, there you go. There's the teeth. That's why it's being done.
Mark Eiglarsh, my goodness, I'll tell you one thing. You are an incredible attorney. I can't wait to hear these opening statements and hear how this trial progresses.
Are we really done?
Unfortunately, I have to wrap up because you've been doing a great job.
No.
I asked everything I wanted to ask.
Buddy, okay, here's I'm serious. This isn't like to promote anything. Yeah. I'm telling you, there is 96% material that we have yet to cover, which is what a trial is for, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, you've done an incredible job teasing them, I suppose, because there's so much more. I will leave here going, oh my God, I didn't tell them about this. I didn't tell them about this. Yeah, but there's so much that we didn't discuss. But you did a great job. But in the interest of time, that's all we've got. But there's so much more that would answer these questions more thoroughly.
And look, it's not even teasing our coverage of the trial. Really what it is, I think it's an important case. I really do. In a day and age when we're talking about the liability of parents of school shooters, when we're talking about if more could have been done. I mean, it's the year anniversary of Uvalde, and we're looking back on mistakes that were made there. I think that this is important, and I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk about it for 30 minutes or so, and I'm going to be looking forward to seeing more of it, Mark.
Well, time flew by. I cannot believe it's 30 minutes. And I will tell you, if you're a cop out there and this becomes precedent, be very careful. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a police officer if you somehow make a choice. You think that it's a sniper when it's not. You make the wrong choice. You keep people away. And now all of a sudden you're facing a life sentence. It could happen because it's happening to my client.
All right. We will watch and see how it unfolds. Mark Eiglarsh, terrific. Great having you as always. Always good seeing you.
Jesse, thank you. You're great. I appreciate it. Thank you.